Welcome to Kansas Ag Reports. I'm Ken Rahjes. On this week's program, we begin a series of conversations with the Valley Hope Association. They're a Kansas-based company helping people deal with addiction to alcohol and drugs. And we will learn more about, as we come out of this pandemic, how they can help. We begin with the president and CEO of Valley Hope, Steve Knuth. We also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, plus our weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion, a division of Keiko isobe.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
In Ag News from agview.net, the U.S. economy continues to outperform expectations as stimulus funds fueling a robust consumer spending. Forecasts point to 7% GDP growth for 2021. That's the fastest rate of expansion since 1984, according to CoBank. The transition to less COVID restrictions, though, has begun, but the economy and rural industries, that won't be going back to any pre-COVID conditions. Researchers say the focus in Washington now is moving from crisis management to building for the future, and the outcomes will reshape rural economies. Meanwhile, CoBank reports the cyclical turn in grain pricing continues during the first quarter of 2021. It's picked up even further gains ahead of now spring planting. Farm supply retailers positioned to benefit from an exceptional strong spring agronomic season, outpacing fall and spring of last year. U.S. fuel ethanol sector has recovered, production running near 90% of pre-COVID levels. Chicken, beef, and pork all seeing strong demand and profitability, but dairy exports are struggling, mainly due to some shipping-related issues. American consumers feel agriculture can be part of the solution to climate change rather than just the problem. A Cargill Feed for Thought survey says those who indicated climate change is important to them rate livestock and agriculture lowest in negative impact compared to other industries regarded as significant contributors. Over 1/3 of the respondents expressed confidence in the industry's ability to limit its contribution to climate change. Survey responses came from consumers in the U.S., France, South Korea, and Brazil. Participants say transportation and deforestation were ranked as the greatest contributors to climate change. And U.S. corn exports in February hit 6.3 billion tons, or 248 million bushels, according to official census data. That tops 2008 record of the month by 17%, the largest monthly volume since July of 2018. January corn exports had missed the month's all-time high by just a handful of cargoes. December volume was the biggest in 13 years. That marked a much-needed reversal from the average export pace observed the first quarter of the 2021 marketing year that began back in September. Weekly export data suggests that March shipments reached an all-time monthly record by a long shot, likely topping 9 million tons, the largest ever volume, 7.75 million tons set in May of 2018. The March high, 6.7 million from 2017. More Ag News online at agview.net. We'll have more in a moment.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And agview.net, serving the Beef Belt and Western Corn Belt with reliable and relevant agriculture information. agview.net.
This is Steve Knuth. He is the president and CEO of Valley Hope, with locations all around the state of Kansas, and we're going to start a several-part series on what Valley Hope does, what they can provide to folks as we kind of get out of this COVID situation. Boy, how has COVID affected, say, those that maybe have some dependencies, especially when it comes to, say, drugs and alcohol?
Well, I think there's plenty of statistics and plenty of reporting done in the last several months, in fact, most of the last year. Not only folks that have been suffering with addictions, no doubt there are addictions being created through this because folks go into isolation. The human being isn't designed to be isolated from other people, and I don't care who you are, one way or another, this thing has leveled a certain level of stress on everybody, and that stress for some folks is just simply turned into more alcohol consumption, more drug addiction, more drug overdose deaths. We've heard quite a lot about the spike in overdose deaths from drug usage in the last year or so. And beyond addictions, just general mental health. I think you mentioned you've done some interviews with some mental health folks. You don't necessarily have to be addicted to alcohol to have issues coming off COVID. It's just a mental issue all the way around.
We'll talk about how your staff, it's kind of hard to prepare for that. With what you do, but the pandemic brought on a number of things, and maybe folks that thought they maybe had it all together, but maybe being isolated, some other things, working from home, changed a lot.
It did, and setting out here in rural northern Kansas, or I live in Holdridge, Nebraska, we're rural communities. It even goes beyond the pandemic. We went through several years of very negative commodity prices. Now that's kind of turned itself around, but there's been that weighing on people too out here in rural communities, and it all kind of lends into what is your mental state, and are you self-medicating one way or another? And unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on. And personally, here at Valley Hope, we've been struggling with the pandemic because we have facilities that are shut down due to folks that have acquired COVID or they've been exposed. So we've had some census problems, which have created some income problems. But we've been trying our best to get ramped up for the backside because we believe there's going to be, unfortunately, a big demand for people like organizations like this in the next few years because of COVID. So.
We're talking with Steve Knuth. He is the president and CEO of the Valley Hope organization. It is based in Norton, Kansas, but there are facilities all across the state. And we're going to take a break, come back, and talk more about kind of moving forward. We'll do that in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And our guest is Steve Knuth, who is the president and CEO of Valley Hope, based here in Kansas with locations around the state. And we're talking really about moving forward, if you will, and maybe some of the challenges that COVID has brought. Steve, last year brought some of that instability, fear, some of the things we talked about, and we're seeing possibly the end, and then getting back to some of the normal routines. But but there's still people I know that have fear, have some concern, and so how can people cope with that? How can they, what are some of the things maybe that your organization can share when it comes to moving forward?
Well, I think it is going to not. Hopefully, we're on the backside, and I think you're right. It's not going to just go away overnight for each one of us. There's a certain amount of fatigue that's gone on with this thing for all of us to varying degrees. So it's going to take a while for us to recoup as a country, as a world, and as an individual mentally. So, how do we cope with this? I think My personal opinion is I've been ready for this for a few months. I finished up with my vaccination a few weeks ago, and I feel a little bit bulletproof, which might not be the best thing, but even before I was vaccinated, I put a mask on, and I covered 7 states to get to the 17 locations of Valley Hope. We just got to pick up and go at some point. I think we've just got to get past the fear of this thing. It's real. A lot of people have lost a lot of family, friends. I'm not saying it's not real, but we got to get back to going.
And so part of that is, though, as you talked about, get back and going, and that means making sure you have a good support group, family, friends, maybe even some professionals.
Right, and that's very true, because get back to the mental health, whether it's an addiction or not, there are going to be a lot of issues, and folks need to, personally at some point in this interview we may talk about my story, but there's no shame in having some mental health issues or having some struggles with addictions. The biggest struggle for folks is admitting they need to go get some help, and boy, this pandemic has created probably plenty of folks that are needing that. So
now I want to make sure, as we wrap up this segment, if folks do have some more questions and maybe services you provide, maybe there's a spouse, maybe there's a family member that says, hey, this may be something that could help my loved one, how can they gain more information?
Well, they can go to the Valley Hope website. They can call and talk to representatives through the Valley Hope system. Throughout 7 states, there's alumni strung around, especially in particular in this immediate area, because Norton, Kansas was the original facility 54 years ago. So there's just a ton of alumni around the country that think the world of this place. So it isn't hard to get some information about Valley Hope. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, and it's hung around for a long time with wonderful programming. So
Steve Knuth, who's the President CEO of Valley Hope, has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Aquaculture is making waves as a rapidly expanding industry that promotes global food security and economic growth. As worldwide demand for protein continues to grow, soy becomes a major player as the principal feed ingredient used in U.S. aquaculture. The Kansas Soybean Commission and International Grains Program Institute in Manhattan hosted the Soy Aquaculture Alliance Board of Directors for their March 25th through 28th meeting. A key point of discussion was U.S. soy quality in feeding fish, and a study which found U.S. grown soy topped other countries around the world in terms of meal quality. Another focus of the meeting was relationships. SAA Executive Director Ken Rahjes. 11 state soybean boards contribute to the Soy Aquaculture Alliance, which aims to promote soy in as many fish diets as possible. SAA also collaborates with the U.S. Soybean Export Council, World Initiative for Soy and Human Health, the United Soybean Board, and American Soybean Association to complete its work. The organization initiates research on soy feed inclusion rates and works with manufacturers on sourcing soy as an economical feed option. The work of SAA ultimately grows the demand for U.S. soy by developing and expanding markets for soybean meal.
What if sustainability were synonymous with U.S. soy? If energy efficiency, water quality, and soil health help define U.S. soy's value? That future is here, the time is now. To meet end-user demands, the Soybean Checkoff is committing to sustainability that's achievable, worthwhile, and enduring. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
One of the critical ways the Kansas Department of Agriculture serves the state of Kansas is to protect animal health. a role that is filled by our Division of Animal Health. This team of veterinarians and other professionals works to eradicate infectious and contagious livestock diseases throughout the state. They inspect feedlots and livestock markets and conduct disease tracebacks, and they maintain records on calf head vaccinations, herd records, and import and export requirements. In addition, the Animal Facilities Inspection Program regulates companion animal facilities licensed under the Kansas Pet Animal Act, and the Brands Program maintains a registry of more than 17,000 brands. Along with the obvious issues of 2020, animal health faced some unique challenges as well. Potential overcrowding of swine due to the closure of pork processing plants in other states led KDA to develop plans for a state response. Those plans were ultimately not necessary, but significant lessons were learned which can be applied to future foreign animal disease preparedness, including efforts this spring to expand Kansas livestock composting expertise. And speaking of disease response, Kansas saw an outbreak of vesicular stomatitis virus in 2020, which affected the horse industry significantly and also had an impact on the cattle industry. The Division of Animal Health conducted more than 270 total investigations and worked with local veterinarians and horse and livestock organizations to share current and accurate information. We responded to other animal disease issues too throughout the past year, including West Nile virus and pyroplasmosis in horses, chronic wasting disease in elk and deer, and rabbit hemorrhagic virus. Find out more about how the KDA Division of Animal Health works to protect animals across the state of Kansas at agriculture.ks.gov/animalhealth.
Premier Farm and Home has what you need to make your lawn the best in the neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Ken. We choose Premier Farm and Home for the professional look that we do ourselves.
Feel free to stop in. You can also visit our website at heycow.com.
This week, the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission highlighted its Northeast Kansas Commissioner, Nathan Larson.
I live here in Riley County, about 23 miles northwest of Manhattan, Kansas. I predominantly farm grain sorghum, wheat, and soybeans.
He discussed his market development work with the U.S. Grains Council.
Well, I was asked at a Farm Bureau meeting whether I'd be interested in serving on the commission. It was something that interested me. I've been raising sorghum all of my life. My primary thing we first started in on was doing research. Recently, I've moved more on the marketing side of things. I've had some opportunities to go on some trade missions, which got me to know what the work of the Grains Council was, made me interested in it. They were looking for somebody to fill the role for the Grain Sorghum Commission to represent them on the Grains Council, and I was asked if I would be interested in doing that, and it was something that interests me with the marketing end of it.
Larson shared his perspective why being involved locally matters globally.
With good years, increased acres, increased production, the marketing end of the grain sorghum is very important. Good relationships with our foreign buyers is very important. It's basically the driving force that keeps a lot of the small communities alive, the agricultural community. But with the markets with grain sorghum now selling typically higher price than corn, I've heard several farmers that said they're going to transition back into grain sorghum this year, so that bodes well for grain sorghum, and I think we'll have a good year. I think there's going to be more acres planted this year than there has in the past few years.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
The Preserving Family Farms Act of 2021 was introduced recently. This bipartisan legislation to expand IRS Code Section 2032A would allow cattle producers to take advantage of the special use valuation and protect family-owned businesses from the devastating impact of the federal estate tax. In the Tax Reform Act of 1976, Congress recognized the disproportionate burden of the estate tax on agricultural producers and created Section 2032A to help them keep their farms. However, the benefits of special use valuations have been stymied over the years as the cap on deductions has failed to keep pace with the rising value of farmland. While the current 2032A reduction is 55% higher than the value established 2 decades ago, USDA estimates cropland values have increased by 223%, and agricultural land values, including on-farm buildings, have risen by 241%. Due to this rapid inflation, the 2032A deduction no longer aligns with the needs of modern agriculture, nor does it accomplish Congress's intended goal of providing meaningful protection to those most vulnerable to the estate tax. The Preserving Family Farms Act of 2021 would address this issue by increasing the maximum amount allowed under the Section 2032A exemption from $750,000 to $11 million. If enacted, this legislation would provide a permanent solution to an issue that has long plagued U.S. producers.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and LibertyLink that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Good day. This is Derek Hermish with Pinion, a division of Keiko Ice. I'm taking a look in this middle of April grain markets to have some discussion about what we are seeing. Grain markets have exploded higher. They've exploded higher this week, and they have been higher for the last 6 months in a pretty consistent fashion, unlike movement we have seen in quite some time, maybe ever. And as you look to get your crop in the ground at this time of year, it's usually a good time to start looking at what you are going to do for marketing purposes on new crop and perhaps some old crop that you would have left over if you haven't made some of those decisions already. And this year in particular, you can look forward, and it seems like a likely prediction that we will have a lot of volatility this year. And volatility is what we have had so far. It has been mostly upward moves in the market. That won't be the case forever. Certainly there will be some back and forth, and there will be some times where if you are focusing on the markets and you get too caught up in price, could get frustrating because nobody is going to be able to outguess it this year. It could be the year to be looking at the use of some options to give yourself some flexibility, some ranges, and to not necessarily be locking in concrete prices along the way. As we have seen this last year after harvest, prices rallied. Could have been a good spot to sell some cash and think you were making a good decision, and you were, but then the markets go higher, go quite a bit higher. And if you felt yourself having big frustrations over that, to the point where it was really bothering you, could be that this year could be the time to use some options, whether it be buying calls back on aggressive forward contracting sales or to buy some puts to set a floor. It's not a bad idea to look at stuff even if you haven't used it before. And if you find yourself in that position, feel free to give us a call, 888-452-8751.
Well, that's our show this week. Be social with us at kansasagreport.net or our social media channels. It is a busy time of the year on the farm and ranch, and lots of equipment you may not see every day is out and about, sharing the highways and country roads that many of us travel. So please take time, look twice before moving through intersections. We all want to continue to enjoy this great spring weather. I'm Ken Rahjes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Are you looking for Medicare supplement insurance plans? Now is a good time to look at your options with Kansas Farm Bureau Health Plans. A Medicare supplement insurance plan can help cover certain out-of-pocket expenses Medicare doesn't cover. Things like deductibles, co-insurance, and certain limitations that can be costly in the event of an accident or illness. With Kansas Farm Bureau Health Plans, you have options to Medicare supplement insurance plans with 4 levels of affordable coverage and service from an organization known for its commitment serving Kansans. We encourage you to compare our rates. For more information and to get a quote, contact a Farm Bureau Financial Services agent near you or visit kfbhealthplans.com. Medicare supplements insured by Members Health Insurance Company, Columbia, Tennessee. Not connected with or endorsed by the U.S. or state government.